Okay.
Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I am delighted to welcome a very, very accomplished entrepreneur, a fashion designer turned tech entrepreneur, Akshay Wadhwa from New Delhi, India. Akshay, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ashutosh. Thanks for having me over.
Thank
It's
you.
really a great honor to be on The Brand Called You and to share my experience with you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Akshay is the founder and CEO of an organization called Blue Rickshaw, and we'll talk about Blue Rickshaw. So, Akshay, let's start with asking you, what was your motivation to start this venture, and what is the background about the name?
Okay, so as you rightly pointed out, that I'm a fashion designer turned tech entrepreneur doing shows across the world, and where I realized working with international buyers that on the buyer side, there's always been an issue of trust and credibility, especially procuring from small businesses in India. Now it goes back to my experience with them. When I started speaking to them, they said, we would love to work with Indian manufacturers, artisans, but we just don't know a way to reach out to them because we do not trust the company. And then the systems are so complex. And even from the seller side, the whole system is so complex that a small artisan in a small town in India does not have access to those markets. I mean, they have to probably take part in a trade show, spend thousands of dollars. And post-COVID, that's not an option anymore. So, when COVID hit, that's when I was, that's when I started Blue Rickshaw, which was last year. I mean, the name, I'll go to the name after this, but when COVID hit, immediately I said that, something needs to be done about, global supply chain, where travel is not an option, travel because very restricted. And that's when Blue Rickshaw was formed. Okay. Now, I'll tell you more in detail as we talk more about, how we do it. But apart from the name, it comes from, it's actually my grandfather's legacy. So my grandfather came to New Delhi from Firozpur, Punjab. And he was sleeping on a pavement for 2 years, trying to sell goods from different areas around Delhi and selling it locally, and he slept there as well. He wanted, back in 1959, 1960s, travel was still a luxury, traveling to different parts of the country. So after 2 years, the first thing he invested on was not a house, it was a rickshaw, so that he could commute to different parts of the country, be it Surat, be it Banaras, be it Calcutta. He would travel for days, procure different stuff from there and sell it again on the same pavement. So I wanted to continue his legacy and take his legacy forward by selling it to the world. That's why the name Blue Rickshaw. And the interesting part is that he painted that rickshaw blue, so that he could be identified from a distance. People know, and he was very passionate about this, and that's when the name was formed.
Wow, what a powerful example of branding, with
absolutely
identify even a color to what he was doing. Amazing.
Yes, absolutely.
So Akshay, as you've been building this organization over the last couple of years, what have been some of your learnings and some of your challenges?
Okay, so we actually started building our organization. So we launched a company last year. Initial months was me completely coming from a complete different background, which is a creative industry. Of course, there was uphill challenges, but one thing I was very sure about, that it has to be done through technology. It has to be done through, it has to be a technology-based platform, because, the kind of vision we needed, that we needed to translate, we needed a good, and I had the deep expertise. So in a few months, I hired a CTO, and he actually became a co-founder. His name is Krishnan Chandra. He comes with 23 years experience in technology. We sat down for a few months, started working on every bit of detail of the platform, where things could possibly go wrong or have gone wrong. And in April 2021, we launched our platform. The unfortunate thing that happened to us was May and June, India hit the second a wave of lockdown. Now, this became a real challenge for us, especially when it comes to the supply chain, because the minute we launched in April, we started getting a lot of orders from the US and Canada. Now we had to do something about it. So I started contacting the high commissions, both the American and the Canadian high commissions, and started sending, because logistics was completely shut. So we contacted them and tried to book our shipments through the expatriate flights, which were sent from India under the air bubble agreement. Now, the second part of it was that it became such a huge challenge for the suppliers to supply to us, because even locally, everything was shut. So we helped them get special permissions. We helped them organize things from their state, and we got them special permissions to open their factories and supply the orders to us. And that was the initial challenge that we hit early on, within 1 month of our launch. And when you do a business, you get multiple challenges like these, and the idea is that you do not get daunted by them. In fact, every challenge is a learning. Every challenge has exponentially helped our growth. So, and then we realize what could possibly go wrong, and we sort of take out a solution. And being an entrepreneur, I think it's a pretty much a part of the journey.
Fascinating. So when I was reading about you, a phrase that you use is that your vision is to where a small store in Milwaukee can procure 10 copper bottles from Baradri in Uttar Pradesh. Right. Tell me about your vision to connect small buyers and sellers.
Okay. So, this is the whole vision. As I previously said, small buyers always had the issues of trust and credibility.
Correct.
On one side, there are chains and there are brands who have direct access to these markets like India, Bangladesh, Vietnam, and China. But whereas a small store, a small mom and pop store, when I started speaking to them, they said that it does not make sense for us, be it the supply chain. They do not, the trust and credibility issues definitely there. Then the biggest challenge that they face is that most of the manufacturers that they have been in touch with, who are more reliable and more trustworthy for them, have very high order quantities. People who are already selling in those countries. Now, and it does not fit their portfolio. So let's say, if they would have to place an order for those 10 bottles from someone, a big manufacturer in Moradabad, they would have to order a minimum 50,000 or 100,000 bottles, and that doesn't fit their portfolio, because most of their annualized revenue is less than $5 million a year. So, and it does not make sense for them to fly back to India, go to every part of the country. Right. Even if they do that, they would still not get that trusted sellers. They would still be more convinced, because the whole process is offline. Now, what we have done is that we have tried to make it seamless for buyers. And when you talk about this vision, we are talking about a seamless trade and DoRickshaw takes care of end-to-end handling, both for buyers and sellers at the same time. So that means a buyer doesn't have to worry about imports, compliances, etc. Seller doesn't have to worry about IC, RBI regulations, banking regulations, etc. And that's where DoRickshaw comes in, and that's the whole vision. Hopefully, we could help around 50 million SMEs in India, give them a platform so that it's not only we've started with North America, but the idea is to sell it to the world.
Well, I agree.
Yeah.
And how do you ensure that the word I'm using is verification? How do you ensure that buyer and the seller actually fulfill their obligations? Because as a platform, you're being the marriage broker.
Absolutely. So we are bridging the gaps. Yes. So that's why when we say that we are a curated B2B platform, we entirely mean by that. So the sellers have to qualify a 5-point checklist that we have. That includes the minimum viability, the minimum order quantities, the quality. We do due diligence on the sellers in order to understand, go to their social media handles, probably randomly, if they have those small units, probably do inspection on the units for sellers. So we're very carefully about selecting the kind of sellers that we have. On the buyers front as well, we have designed the platform in such a way that for buyers, it's almost like, it's like Domino's Pizza, where they could pretty much see from when the order was being put in manufacturing to, it's left the seller warehouse to It's on the way to transit, it's in customs clearance, it's in the buyer customs. So we have made the entire process complete seamless. In this case, for them is just a transaction, which we will just try to simplify the whole thing as a transaction, which can be done seamlessly.
And are there any particular sectors you're focusing on, like handicrafts only right now?
Yes, absolutely. So we are focusing on handicraft, we are focusing on textiles and as well as fabrics. So, me coming from the fashion background, this is one thing that this has always been my expertise in terms of fashion. Now, I can probably say that, being in the handicrafts, working with a lot of artisans, small manufacturers, and just to case on one point, most of our sellers are small sellers who probably don't have ICs or, they've never exported before. So we do a little hand holding for them and also try to educate them of what to manufacture, what to produce. So, that it's almost like a relationship as partners. So, and we see that these sort of partnerships can really take you a long way.
And are you branding them as Blue Rickshaw, or are they going under some other brand name?
No, it's absolutely. So the sellers are, they use their own packaging, they use their own brand name. So the idea is that a small brand called ABC is being sold in a store in New York. That's when they get their recognition. Blue Rickshaw is just a facilitator. Now, right now the platform is closed, and within a very short span of time, we will be opening the platform. But again, we will have rigorous steps because of the whole issue, trust and credibility, because we want this to be a trusted and a credible platform, which is completely transparent, both for buyers and sellers. So very shortly, we'll open the platform where, the sellers should be able to directly sell to the buyers. And it's going to be very soon from, we are looking at realistically 6 to 8 months from now.
Fabulous. And my next question to you, Akshay, is that I think there are a lot of companies doing something similar. Trying to put handicrafts out into the market. I've spoken to several.
Right.
How are you differentiating yourself?
So firstly, we come with deep trade expertise. So when we focus on, when we're talking about North America, we are focusing on North American, there is a different sort of, every part of the world has a very different set of clientele, a different set of buyers and different set of mindsets, a different set of demands. So we have put everything, so why we are different is because we come with deep industry expertise. That means we have worked closely with these retailers, with these buyers, and we do understand what are the challenges they face. Now, again, going back to the technology part, we have kept the UI in such a way that that it becomes seamless for the buyers. Just to give you a quote, most of our buyers are above the age of 50 years old, and we do understand our audience really well. So the idea, these are the people who have not procured anything online. And in fact, a lot of them don't even have an account on Amazon. Now they are the ones who are placing repeat orders with us. So that is, only comes with a certain set of expertise.
Correct.
Yeah. And secondly, what is most important is that we are a curated platform. We are not an open marketplace. We are a curated platform. That means every product that is going through our platform is from a trusted seller. It's complete transparent process. So these are certain things which makes us different. And that's why we've just opened to North America. The minute we hit those markets, well, we will open it to the rest of the world.
Wonderful. And the other thing that when I was reading about you is that you want to build Blue Rickshaw into a SaaS platform.
Yes. So
tell me about this.
Yes. So it's a part of the vision, because what we have realized is that a lot of these sellers have, what is the best way to reach out to buyers in North America, or in fact, any part of the world, is through trade shows. Now we want to build a trade show in a way that any seller in Saharanpur should, without visiting North America, should be able to showcase his products. So it's completely going to be a virtual show with end-to-end buying. So that means on the buyer side, the issue comes is that even when they meet people at the trade show, the entire process is offline. Now, in this case, we are trying to get both the things together, where the seller can showcase in a couple of thousand rupees and a buyer can buy without having to meet them in person virtually, and with an end-to-end buying right after, and going through the entire checkout process. And it will help us with the 50 million SMEs, having their footprint globally. It is pretty much a part of the vision.
Amazing. So, when the pandemic hit, you were just telling me that supply chains got hit.
Absolutely.
And you decided to, step in and, form or create Blue Rickshaw.
Right.
One of the challenges that a lot of supply chains face is, how do I procure small lots and how do I ship small lots?
Right.
I'd love to get your perspective on how you are solving this problem.
Okay, so it's actually it's actually pretty simple. When we talk about in this case, it's just about the efficiency of the supply chain. So most of the sellers that we have at Blue Rickshaw are small manufacturers or artisans or weavers. They make small lots. So and most of our buyers are actually small buyers. So that means that they would want to, and the way it works on Blue Rickshaw as a platform is that a buyer would buy 10 products or 5 products from one seller and probably buy five products from each seller. So in this case, the quantity becomes 50. Just an example. It's easier to ship that lot through DHL, FedEx, because the value proposition for the buyer is that it's different. Firstly, that's something that even if there is no direct access, every product is verified. Right. Every product is gone through certain checks and balances, including quality checks. So the buyer is very confident that even if he's getting 50 products, he doesn't have to sit on that inventory for 6 months or 1 year. So this becomes very easy for them. So even if that means that he's paying it through sea shipment, now what we have done is we have tied up with a couple of companies, a couple of startups who are sending small lots. So another approach that we are taking is trying to combine those small lots and sending it across to the United States and Canada. In that case, the buyer saves that money. And that is how we are solving this problem as a company.
Fascinating. So I've got time for 2 more questions. My next question, again, for buyers and sellers. How do the buyers and the sellers reach out to you? I mean, do you have a large number of people, or do you have a big presence on social media, which is announcing what you're doing?
So I think this is something for the sellers. Fortunately, a lot of sellers have contacted us through our Instagram pages, through other social media handles. A lot of them have personally emailed me and most of the suppliers that we are seeing is through strong word of mouth. So that means, and just to give you a context, out of the sellers we have onboarded, 50% have already shipped out 2+ orders in spite of May and June being locked down in 5 months. So that is a strong statement in itself. That means they have, and so that part now. The second part that we are working on is, of lately we have gotten a lot of traction from people in the government of India. So various trade bodies, various organizations in the government of India have approached us because we are giving artisans a platform. We are giving, and this is a problem even the government of India has been trying to solve, and it fits with the vision of the country of reaching to a $1 trillion exports by 2028. So that's why we are getting a lot of interest from that. One of the, of course, I would not like to name the organization still. We have a formal process of doing it, but there are a lot of organizations where we are tying up not only with. We are tying up with tribal artists across the country. We are tying up with small artisans, handmade copper products, terracotta products, marble manufacturers from Agra, leather manufacturers from different parts of the country. So we are getting a lot of. In terms of buyers, we are again, we are working very closely with the high commissions in setting up our system there. We already have local partners. In fact, my investors in the US, we have a sales team both in the US and Canada. And we have people on the ground there who are firstly doing the hard selling. Secondly, the buyers are, the good part is that the buyers are also discovering us through social media because they find an interesting proposition in us.
Right.
So we are not investing on marketing. everything that is happening is more organic for us. So
Fascinating.
that's exactly.
Fascinating.
So yeah, but
So
we are definitely, yeah. Please.
Go ahead.
No.
Okay.
So I mean, that's the sort of, it's just everything is building organically. You know, we are seeing a great growth both in terms of buyers, and we are seeing a lot of, you know, when you talk about B2B, B2B is also a lot of repeat orders, and we see most of the people some people have already placed like 6 to 7 repeat orders in a matter of like 3 to 5 months. So that's something that we're looking at.
Very interesting. So my last question to you, Akshay, now is that, you know, you've currently taken your Blue Rickshaw to the shores of the USA and Canada.
Yes, absolutely.
What is the next logical step? Which part of the world do you look at, and how do you grow into such a large organization?
So, so firstly, US and Canada, as I said initially, now the next logical step would be, of course, expanded to different parts of the world. We are opening it up gradually so that we can have, because not every product is viable for, let's say, for a product might be viable for United States, but might not be viable for Dubai. You know, so the idea is to slowly open it up to the world. Our next plan was to open it up for UK, Middle East, and parts of Africa. And then, you know, that's the next step we are looking at.
Wonderful.
The eventual goal of Blue Rickshaw is to create a B2B2C channel where we are talking about an inventory-less model, where Indian SMEs become the sole suppliers, and retailers having an inventory-less model. That means that they're still making their money without having to invest in inventory or having a store, like a physical store. So that's the end vision of Blue Rickshaw.
Fabulous. Akshay, on that note, I just want to say thank you so much for
Thank you.
You know, talking to me about Blue Rickshaw, telling me about your incredible vision, telling me about the story of your grandfather. I thought that was so fascinating. And
thank you so much.
I just look forward to seeing Blue Rickshaw pedaling away in every country of the world. Good luck.
Thank you so much, Ashutosh, and thanks for having me over. It's really been an honor speaking to you, telling you about my story, and I think this, what we are trying to do is, definitely helping up. The idea of Blue Rickshaw is to help out small businesses, and being a small business myself, I have faced this challenge numerous times. And going back to this, the whole trigger was happened when and this was one part that I probably missed out on telling you, that I was one of the top 10 designers of Vancouver Fashion Week and covered in British Vogue in 2016. Now, I was on a completely different high at that particular point of time. And I thought, I'm such a big designer. Now started walking to a few stores in Vancouver, in Yaletown. And to my surprise, I was pretty much thrown out of the stores. And a similar story happened again a year later in New York. And I was like, okay, it's so difficult to sort of enter these markets. I still was almost published in every media, one of the top 10 designers. That's when I thought in my head that how difficult it is for a small seller to actually create a footprint here. And a part of this comes from Blue Rickshaw as a vision, and that's when and within a short span of time, within a few months, I was retailing out of 130 stores across North America. Wow. So this is the same sort of if I could do it, I'm sure anybody else could do it. And the idea of Blue Rickshaw is to help people do it. So we would want the same for all our fellow sellers and fellow manufacturers that are working with us.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Good luck to you, Akshay. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Ashutosh. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.